I'd like to call the November 5th meeting of the Village of Cold Spring Planning Board to order. We have a couple of items on the agenda tonight, and we'll dispense with the chairman's remarks, as I usually like to do, so we can get right to the business at hand. We have two items in terms of approval of the minutes. The draft minutes for our last meeting on October 15th were posted because we haven't met since October 15th, and as a requirement under open meetings law, we posted the minutes as draft. They were circulated, and at that meeting, we did note that if anybody had any additions or corrections, that we would entertain them at this time. Do any of the members have any, to the October 15th minutes?
Yeah, I have a question. The attachment is an article by Kevin Foley dated October 5th. I agree it's a very good article, but that's not the article that I was referring to.
You have an old version of the minutes. The amended minutes include the October 5th article, and in that article, there's some confusion. It also references the September 17th article, which is, I believe, the one you were talking about.
I wanted the entire September 17th
hang on,
article attached.
let me finish. The October 5th article references the September 17th article. So what we did is we amended the minutes. Both articles are in the minutes, and they're on the website. So it's the minutes and both sets of articles that discuss it.
Okay, so the article dated September 17th?
It's part of the minutes now.
Okay.
All right, it's been posted for the last week or so. Okay, and that's noted. Are there any other questions or comments regarding the October 15th draft minutes? That being the case, may I have a motion to accept the revised minutes as filed and submitted then? Jim, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have also before us now the October 29th minutes. If you'll recall, that was from our joint meeting with the HDRB and the ZBA last week. Essentially what we did is, rather than, I thought it was a very productive meeting. There was a lot of commentary back and forth. Mike Liguori and Bill Bajarski had some interesting comments in terms of updating the FAQs. There's been some email traffic back and forth between the respective members of the boards. Suffice to say, how we left it is it was basically a two-track approach, where we as a planning board would continue to develop our application or refine it, and I think we're almost there, except for maybe some grammatical corrections and cleaning it up. And the second area of agreement was that the respective boards would work with Bill Bajarski to update the building department FAQs that are posted in terms of the application and the land use process in the village, and that each of the respective boards would assign somebody to work with him to make sure that they were consistent and up to date, and pretty much endorsed what each board thought they would want to see in the FAQs. And there was also a common area of agreement that the building department should be the reference source, or at least the starting point for people coming in with an application or a question. So that's what the minutes basically reflect: the who, what, when, and where, and that each of the boards will continue to pursue the process as they see fit.
I'm happy to approve these. On the other hand, I really would like to have had them before tonight.
We don't
and
need,
I know
we do not need to, I'm simply,
Okay.
they were just, as you
it's
can
not
see, they're
minutes, it's a
they're not
record of
minutes.
the meeting.
It's the record of the meeting, it's what took place. I mean, essentially, it was the 29th, it was last week, we're under no obligation. I'm just summarizing what was passed out, and then if there are any comments or additions or anything that we want to do, we have ample time within the 2-week time frame to address it. Okay? Moving right along. Okay, under correspondence, we have circulated the invoices. We have 2 invoices from Anna Giorgio, as well as a detailed invoice from B&L, which brings both our respective consultants up to date currently. We've been circulating the invoices. If anybody has any question or comment on
Yeah, I
it.
have a question. It was my understanding that the applicant would review and sign off on these before they came to us. Is that not true?
That's correct. The applicant has,
These are not signed.
the applicant received the bills, right? We received them from the applicant. It's not, if you notice on the B&L invoice, this is their detail that was received by the village, and it was forwarded to
But where is the signed copy by the applicant?
We don't have a signed copy from the applicant, I'm just simply furnishing this to you because this came in last week. It's with the applicant now,
Oh,
okay?
so we're really waiting to review it.
What
until we
what
get
came
it.
in is we got the bill last week and we requested the detail which is attached to the back of that. You'll see it's not the buff copy, okay? Which this is the detail that is now with the applicant or their business office, okay? It's just here because it's one of the bills. That's why, if you'll notice, there's no voucher attached to it. Right, because it has not.
Point being, we're not being asked to approve.
Well, no, we're not being asked to
No.
approve, it just came in as it's correspondence, okay? The other two are vouchers, which means they've already been reviewed and vetted by Ellen. Okay, so again, if there were any questions or comments about the bills as they pertain to Anna Giorgio for the legal representation, those represent current bills. We're awaiting the detailed response back from Butterfield regarding the invoice, which we have an original copy of. That being the case, is there any question or comment regarding legal representation in the invoices that have been presented to the board this evening? I have a motion then to accept the invoices as presented.
Wait, I thought we said that we were gonna wait for them to review them.
We're waiting
No,
on
no,
the.
Two
I said-
vouchers.
I said the legal invoices, the two
Yes.
vouchers.
Two vouchers.
That's what I just said, the two vouchers, not,
Yeah, but those aren't signed by the applicant, are they?
no, these aren't, these are vouchers. These have been already, they've been submitted by legal representation.
Then why wouldn't we have the copies that have been signed by the applicant?
Because the applicant already, if we have a voucher, the applicant has already signed off on those. Those are ready to go. Ellen has already vetted them. That's why the village voucher is attached. This is an original bill. There's no voucher attached to it.
So both of these have been signed off by the
Right,
applicant?
because the village voucher is ready to go, which means we sign off on it and then it goes to the village board. That's why the cover sheet is there. There's no cover sheet on here because it has not come back from Butterfield yet. They only received it on Friday. Okay. Again, on the motion to accept the vouchers for legal representation, do I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Okay, so the legal vouchers, I have those, I have to sign those and leave those for Ellen. And that'll await our next meeting, which will probably be the 19th. I need the original back. So that's that. All right. Next order of business, that's correspondence. You all have a copy of or it's circulating, is the copy from Hogan and Rossi regarding Mike Liguori's firm resigning as the village council as effective December 5th. That was forwarded to the village board and to the respective board chairs Monday afternoon. So it's pretty self-explanatory. And then any other correspondence. That concludes the correspondence that we have, I believe. Correspondence.
Procedurally, will we have a chance to see these vouchers when they do come for approval, when it comes back from the applicant?
Generally, what has happened is, if you look at the voucher from Anna Giorgio, it's the routine voucher that comes in every month. The bill comes in, they forward it to Butterfield, Butterfield looks at it, says, yeah, okay, sends it back to Ellen, Ellen signs off it, creates the voucher, and then forwards it to us where we need to review it, sign off on it, or whatever, okay? That's,
Since we have to approve it, sign off on it, it would be good to see it for more than 2 minutes
Right.
before.
if
You wanna
you,
see it prior?
if you, hang on, but the B and L one, which is the
I
detail.
understand that,
Okay.
we'll get to see that.
Yeah, that'll be at our next meeting.
And it'll be in material that we receive before the meeting.
If we wanna have, if what you're asking me to do is now have Ellen create a PDF and circulate that instead of an original copy, I don't know if Mary or Ellen wanna do that.
If our signing off
All right, then we can.
assumes we know something about it.
Then we
I
can
think
add,
should.
okay, then we can add another a month, another 2 weeks of the process. I really don't, if people wanna do that.
See what the rest of you think.
No, it's fine, I mean,
You want to see the prior.
I just would
Alex
like
in
to
it,
be
or-
able to see it a few hours before. the
I agree
meeting.
with her.
Okay.
We have been criticized in the past on other projects because of charges by consultants. So I think that it behooves us to make sure that we're in agreement with these charges. And when a charge comes before us, it would make me feel better to see the applicant's signature onto it, that they acknowledge that they've reviewed these charges,
So what
not
we'll-
just a blank
okay.
sheet onto it.
so what we'll do then, I mean, again, this was the process, again, that was negotiated. When the voucher comes to us with the village cover sheet, that means it's been vetted by the applicant and it's been vetted by the village bookkeeper. If now you want the applicant to initial the voucher or put their stamp on it or something like that, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter,
I'm only asking for a little bit of time to
that's
read.
fine, yeah. So I have, again, this is
Not
the
2 weeks.
hang on. It will be 2 weeks simply because we do not have a full-time staff, all right? And, you know, we're devoting an inordinate amount of hours to this as it is. So if we wanna have the opportunity to get it back after the village has vetted it, after the applicant's bookkeeper has signed off on it, which, by the way, entails no criticism on our part because the village's bookkeeper and the applicant's bookkeeper have said, yeah, this is fine by us, all right? So, I don't see how that we're open to any criticism or whatever, but that being the case, if people would still wanna look at the bills after the double track has looked at it, that's fine, but it will add a 2-week cycle to the process, which,
Some of this stuff is months old. What difference does 2 more weeks make?
it doesn't matter, it doesn't make
Well,
any
you
difference.
seem to think it's a big deal.
No, Arnie, again, please do not put words in my mouth. I said we will be adding 2 weeks to the process. It's not a couple of hours, because we meet, realistically, the minimum we're gonna meet is every 2 weeks. I don't have an issue with it. I can't imagine the applicants are gonna have an issue with it. Is your firm gonna have an issue with it?
I think
Fine.
that makes sense for you guys to have time on that.
Fine by me. I
But
mean,
seriously, doesn't it get approved by these 2 sets of Ellen and another bookkeeper?
Yes, it
set?
does.
Both bookkeepers.
Less than, I mean, closer to our meeting sometimes, so that maybe we could have it a couple of days before, rather than.
If, what we can do is, I mean, again, I don't wanna put words in the applicant's mouth or in Ellen's mouth. If Ellen gets it in and says, okay, your meeting is next Wednesday, we got the bill in on Friday, it looks good and everything, I can have her send an email saying, come in and look at the bill if you wanna look at the bill. Or, I just don't wanna speak for village staff about changing their process or increasing the workflow, because I don't know exactly what it is. Alright? What I'm saying is, if we wanna look over, if we wanna do a detailed examination on pending invoices, the most logical thing we could do is just add it to our workflow, which would be every 2 weeks, which I, again, have no problem doing. But if we're gonna do something other than that, we need to get the permission of the other parties involved. That's all I'm stating, right? Okay.
Just be on the record that we aren't in favor of adding 2 weeks, but if that makes the process work better, fine.
Okay, I mean, we'll talk to Ellen, we'll talk to, your bookkeeper doesn't have any problem, I guess.
No, and we can talk to Paul's folks. I mean, I don't think you're gonna have any problem if you wanna sign off, have your bookkeeper sign off on those invoices once you guys have reviewed them. I mean, it makes sense.
That's fine.
You
I
know,
mean,
they can sign off and just say, yeah, we've looked at the applicant, we have no issues, or,
see,
if you have
whatever,
issues with
again,
this.
whatever the village agrees to and the applicant agrees to and the consultants agree to, that's what we'll live with, right? But it's not for us to determine what the process is. Figure it out, and then whatever works that addresses the issues members of the board have, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I think you guys certainly should have time to look at those and,
It's fine.
you know, look
If
through
the
them.
applicant is happy
Yeah.
with your charges, I'm happy.
Yeah,
But we have been criticized in the
yeah.
past for charges
yeah.
made to
I
a
agree.
project by consultants.
We do the same thing, is we have our applicants look at them, you know, if they agree to the.
But again, the process that, just again,
Yeah,
the process that is
process.
in place now has been in place for the last 18 months, and the applicants, the consultants, and the village staff are the ones that came up with it, and it seems to be functioning fine.
Yeah, for the Butterfield stuff, if they have a question of any charge on the invoice, it doesn't come back to you until we've discussed that or resolved that with them.
Right.
And then presumably, I think that's what you're trying to say, is presumably, when you see it here at the end, they've signed off on it, the village bookkeeper signed off on it, and everything should be fine, so.
Right.
But yeah, I agree, you wanna take a look and see it.
So it's fine, so however we need to amend the review process, so then we can have eyes on the document.
Yep.
You know,
I agree.
just, you guys figure it out and we'll live with whatever.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that being said, which brings us now to, let's see, unfinished business. Even though we have Butterfield redevelopments is next on the agenda, we do have Blue Homes here, and since they were here first and they asked nicely, we're gonna do them first, okay? So, like we said, you know, if you're gonna be on time, you're gonna get rewarded. Right. That being the case, if we could have the representatives for Blue Homes identify themselves and, you know, tell us what you have.
Glennon Watson from Beatty and Watson, who are the engineers, surveyors, planners for the applicant. From Blue Homes is Dave McCoy, who's a project manager and works locally, and Bradley Robinson, who's the marketing director. They'll be able to answer any questions, you know, detailed questions with regard to what Blue Homes is and what they build and that kind of stuff. I'll bring you basically through the site plan, what I have seen as issues with the site plan. Tell you a little bit of what I know about Blue Homes, which won't be much because I want to leave them some time to speak about that, and then we'll see where we go from there. Basically, I've got smaller versions of this for each of you.
Smaller versions of
Form smaller versions of the rendering.
Sorry.
Got one?
That's it, there.
Jeff, do you have it?
Yeah.
Blue Homes manufactures and constructs homes. And my understanding is they started in California and they operate partially out of Massachusetts, and they've been doing some work locally. They are now the contract vendee to purchase the former Ford dealership, Impel Ford, which I'm sure you all know as well as I do is down on Fair Street. And what you have on the plan is Fair Street going from right to left from Main Street towards Mayor's Park, past the Riverview, and past Impel Ford, just past Northern Avenue. The property is in an I-1 district. It's adjacent to a residential R1 district. The property line is the district line. The property has 12,500 square feet, which makes it non-conforming, but it's legally non-conforming because it existed prior to zoning. When you apply the setbacks, we have a 20 by 75 foot rectangle within which we could build without requiring any variances. So we do require some variances. The site plan that you have before you has 5 parking spaces, 2 of which are handicap, intended for handicap use. The plan is to essentially build 2 Blue Homes. The one here, as you look at the plan, the one on the left is the model. It's to be furnished so that people can see how the home works, how it's used, what it looks like when it is furnished. The right side is the design center, which potential purchasers will come in and work out their designs with the people from Blue Homes. They're hoping to attract people who come up on the railroad to Cold Spring for a weekend, who are looking for weekend homes. They anticipate, they don't anticipate the kind of volume we'd get into Delhi or Grand Union. They anticipate more like the kind of volume you'd get a real estate office where there's 2 or 3 people at the most in there. Maybe 2 employees at a time, maybe 1 or 2 customers, so we feel parking is appropriate. The office design center on the Main Street side of the property is connected to the model home by a level ramp, and they're built at the same level so people can walk from one building to the other. A patio in the back, stormwater mitigation features here, basically rain gardens to catch some of the roof water, and a garage in the front for storage. We covered just about the maximum in terms of lot coverage, 35%. Because we're on a zoning district boundary, we are required to provide screening against that district line, and we have done that. We're proposing an arborvitae hedge, which if you know where Northern Gate, where Mr. Bergamo and I live, there's a hedge that 20 years ago, right at the base of that hill, there was a hedge 20 years ago, was 5 feet tall. In fact, I have a picture of my landscape architect who's about 4'8", who is taller than they were. So we do need variances. We need front yard variances, we need side yard variances, we need rear yard variances. So we need variances all around. We don't think we need an area variance, we don't think we need parking variance. What we think is most important to know here is we're in a due diligence period, or Blue Home's in a due diligence period, and is quite anxious to move forward on this because I think it's a wonderful project. It's an opportunity to frankly get rid of a building that's, if it's not derelict, close to it. And they're prepared to undertake that and create a new atmosphere. Again, it's outside of the architectural district. It's across from some relatively modern homes. And I think we'll be replacing what's there now with something that will be well-maintained and attractive.
Okay,
Just one last point, we do just have sewer and water service to the building, which we are intending to take advantage of.
Just a general question, how large of an area do you plan to cover from here? I mean,
I don't know off the top of my head how much total coverage we have.
no, I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about your business. What is your business plan?
Oh, I asked that same question before. They expect that they will attract people who come up on weekends by train from New York City.
There are hundreds of people walk by there, especially in the summer and the fall months,
And
going
that-
hiking. These are young professionals.
And that's really why they settled upon this site and why they are willing to undertake the effort to make this site work.
But how large is your market area that you're targeting for here?
I think again, Bradley can explain that better when he speaks, but essentially from all of Dutchess County down through Manhattan or through New York cities and Orange and Rockland County. Occasionally further, but that would be the general thing. And I expect that there would be an opportunity to have, the people that are coming up Cold Spring for weekends and maybe looking for weekend homes. These are small, very efficient homes that they construct, so they want to attract those people, the young professionals that you mentioned a moment ago. I just want to, what we've incorporated into the plan, we have an existing curb line here, which dies off at the end of a sidewalk, which dips terribly right at this very end of the sidewalk. And then we have a brand new sidewalk just past the property, and we have nothing here but just the pavement where it was all paved out to the street. So the design is a little different. Here we have a curb with the planted area, then sidewalk, and then the lawn. Over here we have an integrated curb and sidewalk with the lawn behind it. So we've elected to extend the planted area and have the sidewalk set back so that there would be a planted area between the sidewalk and the curb. And we have to transition over somehow. So we just there's no easy way to get rid of that. We're proposing basically concrete aprons that integrate with the sidewalk. I personally like I said, I have to voice a little bit of a prejudice here. I find driveways that interrupt sidewalks offensive. I'd rather have the sidewalk interrupt the driveway. And we have examples that are around the village. I wish it wouldn't be allowed. So when I had the opportunity to do it either way, I chose to do it this way. These aprons would be concrete and built as part of the sidewalk. So we would have the continuous feel of the sidewalk. Again, I'm revealing my personal prejudice in that matter. That's the whole site plan. It's really fairly simple. There's not a lot of grading. There's not a lot of infrastructure to deal with. The biggest part of the project probably is cleaning the site up.
Okay, thank you. Bradley, would you identify yourself and you can drill into the specifics of your operation?
So I'm Bradley Robinson. I'm actually the director of integrated marketing for Blue Homes. And so my project is actually putting up mobile homes across the country. We have a lot of interest from this territory, and so that's what drew us to Cold Spring. And a lot of when we did the land search was, we knew we wanted to come up here. We've actually built a home in Garrison, and we have another one out in Copake, New York, which is really hard for people to get to from Manhattan. So one of the things that we required was that it would be in a nice town on a rail line, so we're not doing heavy impact with traffic, that it would be light impact using the public transit system to actually bring people to come look at a Blue Home. And when we do this, this is actually office space, as Glenn mentioned, for our folks who are currently working out of their house to come and actually have a place and have a center for them to come and work. In addition, any customer that is in the process of buying a home, they sit there and they want to pick tile and cabinets and flooring, and this would give us an opportunity to have a place for them to come and look at samples. So that's kind of what this is, more of an office space. In terms of the draw, we definitely want to do Manhattan. We want to do this region, Westchester County, Dutchess County. And then what we found, even with the house in Copake, is there's not a natural saturation as we continue to get interest. And so for us, this is a long-term investment because we think that we would be able to maintain and use this property over the long term here.
Chuck, at this point, why don't you take us through some of your initial conversations and reviews, and then we can open it up, give us a basis for
Yeah.
more detailed questions.
Yeah, we had some initial conversations with the applicants and with Dave McCoy a couple weeks back when they first submitted, and certainly when Glenn came on board as their consulting engineer, to kind of bring that local context. I think initially, you know, the original concerns were looking at the zoning district, what was allowed there certainly. And the use seems to be allowed under that district, which I think is okay. I think the initial questions are, is just the density and the setback requirements. The way they're looking to utilize the property, you know, really kind of maximizes the amount of square footage that's available up there. And as Glenn said at the beginning, if you look at the setback requirements for this parcel, and we can roll the set of plans out, I think they show that on here. The initial setbacks as required by the zoning really prohibit, you know, a lot of use of this parcel, given the current zoning. Yeah, if you look at this and just slide this down, you know, we've got the main parcel line outlined here. The concern is that when you apply the setbacks, for instance, there's a 50-foot required front setback, 25 foot on either side, 30 foot at the rear, you're left with a relatively small, basically buildable area for this village lot. Now,
Have they met with the ZBA?
not yet. The intent, you know, I think, of the zoning, you know, basic in this area was to allow kind of redevelopment of the smaller sized village parcels where you have that traditional infill. But, you know, unfortunately, I think the current zoning, you know, setback requirements really kind of prohibit that if you look at this example here. So in other words, you know, could you build a structure of these dimensions on here and make it a feasible thing for a house? Probably not. Could you put another commercial property in there that meets those setbacks? You know, probably not, given the size of the lot and the zoning. So, you know, it presents kind of a quandary, and, you know, certainly I think if they were to present this to the ZBA and look for those area variances, you know, they'd probably have a pretty good case, you know, for making the argument for getting those variances. You know, it's hard to say. You know, the pre-existing conditions of this lot, including the zoning requirements, you know, make it difficult to build under any conditions. So, you know, having said that, that's really, I think, the main difficulty. They've got sewer out there, they've got water, you know, power utilities, that's all there to support the kind of use. The use in and of itself doesn't appear to be too intense, based on, you know, their model, or how they're describing it. So,
It certainly appears to be less intense than the former use.
yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, they had an active car dealership there for years, you know, and they were moving people and vehicles in and out. So, there were some contamination issues.
Oh, I
Did you
think
guys wanna
that's
touch on
all
that? I think that's all set.
Yeah,
That's all straightened out.
We
Yeah.
submitted the reports from
Right.
DEC with our.
So we've got the sign off from those.
So that was a question, there is this
Right.
DEC sign off now we have?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think we had a copy of that.
Okay.
Did you guys, you were working on getting that?
We have that, I believe, I'm almost positive it was in our submission to
Okay.
the building department to get us the referral.
Right.
I can certainly furnish that to everybody.
Yeah, we'll just double check it. See.
Absolutely.
But other than that,
And we've done phase one
right,
environmental.
your phase ones were done, so.
So what is it, private property on two sides,
Yeah.
and village property on this side here?
Yes, that's
Is it
correct.
village in the back?
Village is in the back, and
Yeah.
it's private property on either side.
How
Yeah.
wide is this here?
Well, that goes way, the village
This
goes
continues?
probably at least 100 feet.
Yeah, the DPW garage is
This is in the back.
back around
Back.
there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the,
Yeah, so it's past the DPW garage down to the railroad.
Okay. Questions, comments at this point?
I have a question about the proximity of the garage to the private property that's right next to it. That's raised, that property on that private land?
This comes up a little higher.
Yeah, that's high there, there's a stone, little small stone wall
Yeah.
there. What is the area that would be between the garage and that stone wall? Because that's a driveway currently, right now?
This driveway's over
yeah.
here. Right.
For, no, well, it's for actually the lot that you're dealing with.
This, I'm sorry, I guess I'm not understanding your
The
question.
driveway that's alongside of the dealership now, that lines the wall of the private house next to it. Goes through that.
Yeah, it's sort of, you know, he's sort
What
of
would
back,
be that spacing?
It's about 4.5 feet.
So you're utilizing, for the new garage, the proposed garage is utilizing the prior existing driveway?
yeah, I
It
have
would be
to,
built on that
It
space.
would be built in the approximate same location?
approximate same location. I think this edge, you know, if you look at this edge as you came in, you know, he's got cars that, or he
Right,
had cars that
yeah.
backed into there, and it's sort of, I don't think it was ever real formal, I don't think it was ever a real formal edge, or if it was ever really formal, it was a while ago.
Mhm.
so Blue Homes is a national, builder of recreational homes, or all types of homes? Or-
All types of homes. In this market, we see a lot of
Excuse me,
weekend homes.
could you identify yourself? for the
Sorry,
record?
David McCoy, I'm the manager of project delivery for the New York area and surrounding
So are you
areas.
specializing in one type of home here? Is that the intent? That appears to be a recreational home, right?
They are residential homes. So
I'm sorry?
they're residential homes,
Residential homes.
correct.
I just finished one in Garrison for Rich and Mary Ann Cyrek, who, local people have been around here for 20, probably at least 25 years. They downsized and they just built their full-time, year-round home in Garrison.
Does it look like that?
Somewhat like the one
What
on
is
the
the
left.
design of that?
It's a smaller version of the one on the left. It's that they built what we call an element. The one on the left is a balance, similar but smaller, one module. So what we end up seeing a lot in this market in particular is Manhattanites and their vacation or weekend retreats, and also empty nesters downsizing, looking for something more efficient. They don't want high energy bills, they don't want a ton of maintenance, they want something that's appealing. and
If you've
nice.
been here on a weekend, you'll see hundreds of relatively young people walk by here. They come up on the train.
Right
they
for
walk-
breakneck, yep.
They go up
I
for
get
a
that
hike.
myself. Yep, absolutely.
And that was
So
part
we're-
of the draw, because we knew
Yeah.
that the trailhead was there, so we were
Right.
looking at foot traffic as well when we were doing site visits.
What's the square footage of various models? I mean, you have two models here.
They range,
Cyrex.
none of them are of McMansion proportions, they're all generally very efficient. So 2,400 is average, we have models from 900 on up. If you put them on a finished lower level or a full basement, which we see a lot here in the Northeast where we've already got to go down to frost line anyway, you can double that square footage, and so.
These are slab though, you're talking about here?
No, these
Crawl
are on
space or
crawl
full
space.
basement?
They want crawl space.
At minimum, we need crawl space for connections and everything underneath. The intent on this one, I believe, is basement on the balance, right? Crawl space on the side breeze, which is the one to the right.
So these are modular type homes?
They are, we're not actually modular, we are a modular company, but it is, actually, it's like luxury prefab. So it's all, we use as much green material as we can use. We have, the building is built out of steel, and so what we actually do is we build as much of it in California as we can, bring it here, and then we literally unfold it
It's a
onto the
kit home.
foundation.
essentially.
It is, but it's actually the
Kind
highest
of
end in the market, so we're considered the luxury product of the market, and that's why there's such demand for the house. And so all of a sudden, as a company, we're needing to build our own houses so people can see them.
I have a question. Right now, what you're proposing are, even though one is a model home and the other one is gonna be a sales field office per se,
Correct.
they represent two current models
Correct.
of what you offer.
Correct, that's how we
So-
can show the spaces of the
Totally
building.
get that, but where I'm
Exactly.
going with that is, you're not entertaining the possibility of when you go through your sales cycle here of attempting to convert that into a second living unit.
No, having just gone through, I just, in the design center, as we call the sales office, we actually will fit it out with, it looks almost like a retail center. So there's cabinetry and lighting to show off the different tiles and doors. So actually, it would never be in a configuration that we could ever sell it as a house, to be honest with you, because it is configured as an office.
And again, just, you know, thinking down the road, would you be adverse to accepting a deed restriction along those lots?
In the fact that this one unit would not be resold as residential.
Could never come back and be adapted as a residential unit?
That one I don't have the answer on, I would have to actually
That's why I
go
asked the
back to our
question.
folks, right?
I think we could make that a condition of site plan approval, but if it were deed restriction, it would be permanent. And if the village saw fit ever to make this residential unit and move it out this way to capture this other residential unit, we would be restricted from having residences there. So I think
Well, that's fine, the note on the plan
restriction's
too.
going a little bit far. A note on the plan is fine.
It's good, you're thinking like a former chairman now, it's excellent. Thank you.
Wouldn't they have to apply for a change of use if they did that?
They very well might be, but if we had a note on the plan, it would be something that would, when, assuming we're all gone and this is 10 or
It would be
15 years down the
enforceable,
road, excuse me, it's enforceable if it's a note on the
Yeah,
the
we would
plat.
have no objection to the condition on the plat, but we wouldn't want to do it forever.
Understood. Any other questions or comments from any members of the board at this time? Chuck, it sounds like, I guess, the next step is then a referral to the
Zoning
ZBA.
board, yep. Yeah, if the applicant's willing to move forward and, you know, put the effort into the area variance, you know, application, that would be the next step.
There are no drainage, no engineering, no,
At this point, no.
you just need, yeah, at this point, they need to find out if they can, if it's a buildable
Correct.
envelope as far as the
Correct.
ZBA is concerned.
Yeah, and it would be up to the zoning board to really determine that for you. Once you receive that approval process, then you would come back here for site plan.
There's a mechanism in the town law, and I'm sure that the village law, to run these things parallel. And is there any chance that we could run this thing parallel? So when we got to your end of it, we happened to get there first, and you decided you liked it, you can condition it on the variance. And if we got the variance first, we could come back, so it could be incorporated into your resolution, it would have to be anyway.
Yeah, there's no objection, and we have the ability to do that. I'm simply saying for our purposes, right now, we need to take a vote to make a referral to the ZBA.
Understood.
And we would certainly entertain you continuing to work with the planning consultant, so you could do most efficient use of your time going
Right.
forward, as long as it was with the understanding that the applicant was assuming the total risk and responsibility.
We fully understand that we need variances to go forward on this.
Okay. That being said, any other questions or comments from any members of the board at this point? May I have a motion to refer this application?
Yeah, well, when do we get to reviewing the seeker part of this?
Well, we don't have an application yet, because what we're doing now, what has happened is it's come before us. In order for this application to proceed, it requires variances from the zoning board. Depending on the nature of the variances, it comes back to us, and then the seeker process and site plan review start at that point in time.
I think the biggest hurdle is the ZBA.
Yeah.
I mean, there's at least 5 variances, I mean, that's a huge undertaking.
Right church, wrong pew. That's Thursday nights, so,
Well, that's well, but I would respectfully ask that you consider our application complete and make a decision as to whether or not you wanted to act as the lead agency with regard to seeker. I think you have 2, I'm not sure if you have 2 involved agencies. You certainly have an interested agency in the zoning board. It's an area variance, but site plan approval is dependent on the area variance, so it's a little bit fuzzy in there as to whether or not they are involved.
Yeah, ZBA would be an involved agency. They do have, authority approval over the project, i.e. the area variances.
Well, area variances sometimes are not subject to seeker.
Right.
So
You could circulate an intent to be lead agency.
why don't,
circulate that between
here's
the
what we'll
ZBA.
do is, right now we'll do the referral,
Yep.
because the code requires us to do the referral to the ZBA.
Yep.
Then what we will do as part of in tandem in this process and everything, we'll circulate an intent to be lead agency.
Yeah. that'd be a good
Right,
way.
and then that should, we're not gonna get anything back by the 19th,
Probably not.
no, so it'd be December. We'll circulate an intent to act as lead agency, and we'll do as far as a parallel review. Right, and you should have some indication, I don't know, I can't speak for what the ZBA's agenda is, but as soon as you can get on a ZBA workshop, you'll have some indication as to, Chuck will make his report available to the ZBA, right? And I'm sure at that point in time, and we'll also declare the notice to intend to act as lead agency. Can we
So you're
make
looking for a motion?
we're gonna make a 2-part motion. One, we're gonna make a motion to refer this to the ZBA for the requested variances, for the plan that, as it's been submitted to us. The second part of that motion is to circulate a notice of intent for us to act as lead agency for the seeker review of this site plan application. I have a motion, did you get that, Linda? I have a motion to that effect. Arnie, I have a second. James, any comments, questions, any objections? Linda, unanimous then?
you also might consider making the 239 referrals. I don't know what they
No,
call
we're
it.
not, we're not to the point of Okay, now,
Do you have some literature on blue homes?
We can have that sent over to here to this office for you.
there's
That's
an
fine.
excellent website, do a commercial for your
We
website.
just launched the new website like 2
It's a
weeks
great
ago.
one.
So-
Terrific, yeah,
Really good.
absolutely. That
Also,
being
On
said,
the website are the addresses for the other models?
Yeah, I'd like
Not
to
the
have one.
address is due to private,
Is
we
there-
don't, we have
Yeah,
only
there's
one other
extra
model.
serials.
So
Okay.
it's-
The one in Colvig, is that private?
That's a privately owned home, and he's letting us borrow it to show it on Saturdays. So that is how that works.
I would like to receive that address.
I can send that to you.
And if it's something you'd like to go see, I could definitely coordinate a site visit. We can jump
yeah,
there.
I'd like to just go past the
you
word
talk to
there.
Rich and Mary Ann too, they're just down the street.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
We have
Are
another
there any
home we're
other,
submitting
did you
plans
identify
for
any other
this week.
interested or
Hey,
involved?
guys, that,
Interested would be county plan.
At this point, yeah, county planning would be interested, obviously DEC would be interested, but no other involved agencies.
that portion of Fair Street is not a county road, correct?
No,
Okay,
no.
yeah, so there'd be.
But you're within proximity of the municipal boundary line.
I don't think
The
there's any,
river.
I don't think there's any place in the village that you don't have to go to.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to county plan.
You're pretty much covered, so.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's fine, so.
Yeah.
we
Other
have
than
a
that,
motion.
I think that's it.
All right, so that's good, thank you, we will,
Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much.
all right, that brings us to that. Let's give them a moment to back up. Chuck, we'll make a note, refer the preliminary report to the ZBA.
Yep, we'll do that.
I'll send a cover letter to Marie Early,
Okay, good.
all right?
We can do that, we'll do the secret referral, for you guys to look at,
Okay.
make sure that that's ready to go.
And then when we get it back from ZBA, then at that point, when it comes back here, we'll do the 239.
Yeah, yeah. I think it makes sense, because the county, first thing the county's gonna ask is,
Yeah, I mean,
did they
yeah.
get their variances, or?
If they don't have the variances, I mean, yeah, it's not leaving paper until we know what the extent of the variances.
Exactly.
We know what they're requesting, but we don't know what the ZBA is gonna.
Well, actually grant them,
Just give it to Linda for the file.
you guys tote bags to carry all this stuff out of here.
What do you want to start with?
Let's start with the site plan. You want to do the subdivision?
Because back into the subdivision, it'd be easier to start with the site.
Yeah.
Do the preliminary,
Yeah,
and then you can bring up Mr. Moran and Mr.
Yeah.
Reno.
yeah. Yeah, we'll do a quick introduction.
And please emphasize the timelines and the deadlines and
Yes.
whatever, so where we are tonight,
Yes,
for the benefit of the audience as well.
certainly.
Thank you.
All right. I'll set the.
Linda, you ready? Go ahead.
All right, next we have, guys, is the first preliminary site plan review, initial kind of comments for Butterfield. You guys all got your packets. They came in a couple weeks or last week. You have, in that packet, you have a full set of plans, and you have a SWIP, which is in there, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan. That's the document that basically outlines how they're gonna design and engineer their stormwater systems. And tonight, we have Mr. Galaro's here, Mr. Moran's here, and Mr. Rena's here, their engineer. And we've been working with them pretty closely, as you guys know, over the last couple weeks, as they've really put a push on to develop the set of plans for your review. If you remember, original timelines were, we were anticipating trying to get, a full set of documents, first preliminary engineering documents in advance of this meeting, so that we could have, a couple weeks' time to really go through those and do our first technical review. That didn't happen, the applicants needed more time. The project's complicated, the site's fairly complicated, as we all know. A lot of details to work on, and Joe and his folks, put a lot of work into kind of developing the plans, and I think that just the timing just didn't work out in terms of getting that full set of kind of engineered drawings and things ready for us. And we kind of anticipated it was gonna take them a little bit longer than maybe we thought. A lot of information to put down. I guess you guys remember early on, the level of detail we talked about we were expecting. So, with that, I think it was just a lot of work. So, what we did get, but not in time certainly to do our full review, again, we require 2 weeks, as you guys mentioned, or as you guys know from the last couple of runs. We really need 2 weeks to kind of look at these things and generate a full set of technical comments. But what we did get is the first set of plans, as you have in front of you. I'll just go through it quickly. We've got the erosion and sediment control notes, we've got the site plan, we have a subdivision plan, which we'll look at in a little bit. They did existing conditions with their demo plan, erosion and sediment control plan, grading plan, utility plan, grading and utility plan combined, landscaping and lighting, profiles of driveways, utility profiles, erosion and sediment control details, some additional site details, water utility details, stormwater details, sanitary.
Chuck, rather than us all trying to unfurl what we just
Yeah, let me
got
do
here,
mine. We'll do my set.
Do one set,
Yeah.
take us through each page.
So,
Thank you.
and what we did is we began to really kind of look through this information. And you guys have your packet, so you can certainly look at that. And again, the SWIP is great late night reading, so.
As long as it doesn't hit you in the head when you're
Right,
not
and you
on.
could use it to kind of prop up, your kids at the dinner table, but it's full of information. I will say the applicants made a great effort at this first run in getting their information put together. There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of information, but we are still missing a few pieces. We're missing the engineer's report for the water, we're missing the engineer's report for the sewer, which, they're working on now. It's taking a little extra time, which is understandable. We expect to get that pretty quick. Provided we have those documents and some additional documents related to stormwater in the next couple days or weeks, or a week or so, we should be able to still meet the 19th in terms of providing this board with our full technical review comments. But we're waiting to see. But we want to take this opportunity tonight just to kind of bring you up to date on what they've submitted. So, all right, if you would give me a hand, we'll start walking through sheets, and you'll see some notes here. And Craig and I have generated a list of comments, some initial comments, that I'm gonna have Craig walk through in a minute. just to bring you guys up to speed, but just in general, as you can see, they've started to put the necessary details down. Let me go to the site plan here. For the overall project. You know, it's gone from a concept plan now to something much more real and tangible. We're really starting to design the building locations, they're starting to design sidewalks, they're designing stormwater systems, they're designing water. We've been on the site a couple times with them now. We've met with the DPW folks on site, we've met with fire services on site to start to look at things and to start to look at the preliminary designs, so. And Craig can bring you up to date on some of those, but, you know, as we see, they're developing a lot of information, a lot of detail. They're starting to, you know, really engineer the site, you know, based on existing conditions and what they can and can't do out there. So, with that, Craig, do you wanna kinda just walk through our memo real quick and, you know, just touch on some of the highlights of some of the things we're seeing?
Sure, as Chuck mentioned, we have met in the field with the DPW folks, the applicants, DOT was there as well. The water and sewer reports, although they're being put together at this time by their mechanical engineers, that will give us data on flow rates for fire suppression systems and daily uses of the water and sewer systems and the expectations. Having been through discussions with the DPW, it's expected that the sewer capacity and water capacity are there. It's a matter of crossing the T's and documenting how much will be used, how much we expect will be used, and then confirming that, you know, there is the capacity there and creating a paper trail such that they can demonstrate compliance with the expectations that we feel that they will be able to meet. The additional survey information that we'll be asking for with regards to the meets and bounds and the existing easement stuff of 9D for the existing water main that comes up and serves the other property off to the
Comes up this way.
yeah. So there is an existing easement, it's discussed, but it's not delineated or shown on the plan. You know, we'll be asking for that type of information. There's existing catch basins and drainage network systems that they'll be tying in with their stormwater discharge. We'll be asking for them to show some additional information about what existing utilities are out on 9D, particularly where they're tying in the drainage systems, as well as where they're crossing the road with their sewer system. We'll have to see where the points of potential conflict with the existing, existing utilities are. Some of the, with regards to the demolition plan and demolition process, there's some notes talking about potentially contaminated materials or proper disposal of materials. We'll be asking that there be a note referring to the appropriate DEC and state level and local permits with regards to any tank pulls or any of the other removals of the existing underground structures, as well as compliance with Industrial Code 56 with regards to the potential asbestos from the old hospital. Again, that's a portion that is absolutely covered in the building demolition and the building permits that'll go through the building department. But since it is a part and parcel of the site plan, we just want notes to reflect that obligation on the plans. The fire department was on site and met with us. The plans, are a general reflection of the topics that were discussed there with regards to hydrant locations and all. I would just recommend that we get a set of this plans to the fire chief so that they can review it again as we review it, so that if they do have any discrepancies or spot anything on paper that they didn't see in the field, or if something's different, we can identify it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, in just relation to that, one of the things fire services was looking for was a couple of new hydrant locations in just specific spots that they felt would be, more appropriate. If they had to come in and fight a fire in here, they wanted to be able to ensure that they had a hydrant, in certain locations. So, some of the water lines were kind of redeveloped to, run laterals down. You can see that on the other plans, but.
They were satisfied with the flow rates from those mains?
As of right now, yeah. As Craig said, once we get the engineer's report for water, we'll actually know exactly what those rates will be. But now it's anticipated that there's more than enough. With the relining that was done recently with the water mains, the guys from DPW said there's more than enough pressure in this area to be able to handle, typically what they would expect here. So, and they also looked, you know, it being able to circulate fire apparatus in and around the site based on this
There was
configuration.
no issue with the turning radiuses or anything like that, because I know
Not yet.
some of the garage entrances on building 6 and then the realignment, we, you know, they're aware of that.
Yeah, yeah. So they, as of right now, there's no issues or concerns.
There was also some minor modifications to the water main alignments to minimize the, to loop the water. Originally it was tying, there's a 6-inch, existing 6-inch line that they're tying into on Paulding Avenue, and they realigned the water main such that the 6-inch section that they tied into before it got back to the larger pipe would be a smaller area. So they made some improvements of that nature, and they also included a fire hydrant down along 9D that would provide additional fire support for the apartment complex across the street. They've got
It'll be in
access.
this area.
So it's, I believe it's right in this area.
So the Craig, the loop you're talking about is the one that Greg Phillips was looking to have incorporated?
Yes, it would come out to Paulding
Paulding
Avenue,
Avenue, around the
9D,
back,
and then it would
okay.
come around the back. Right. The other items that we've noted with regards to the water and sewer, or the other item from the building department's perspective is we may want to, we would want to have him look with the building department and the emergency services to the naming of access roads, streets, and parking areas. They currently have a Butterfield Road, a Butterfield Court, and another continuation of Butterfield Court. The unit numbering and street naming conventions such that they comply with 911 emergency response requirements should be looked at now sooner, so that the proper naming can get put on a plan at an earlier stage, and that's a conversation with the building department and fire chief. The water and sewer lines, as they're shown, they're question, it's more of a question of mine, and the direction we'll have to sort out with regards to any potential dedication of water or sewer mains to the village. We'll have to identify whether there's any intent there so that we can provide the proper easements. And it basically becomes a question with regards to whether you're metering all of the water for one site or whether you're metering each individual unit or each individual building. And those details, again, as part of the engineering report, I assume that'll come forward. That will outline your intents with regards to that, and it really impacts the testing and construction and the building and operations as opposed to the overall site plan, but stuff that has to be reflected in note forms on the site plan as we go forward with the approval. With regards to the sewer, the DOT had also mentioned a resistance, shall we call it, to open cutting along across Route 9D with the sewer main. So that would make the existing utilities in depths and understanding what you're up against with regards to directional bore. That section of pipe has excessive 2% grade, so I don't anticipate a problem with being able to do that. But the details accordingly have to be on the plan to reflect that as well. Stormwater management system and report. We have noted earlier there's some inconsistencies or incompleteness based on my very preliminary review, and that you've got the labeling of rainwater harvesting areas and stormwater management facilities in the report that are named and referred to one way. The plan doesn't necessarily, you just have to make sure that the areas on the plan are identified and numbered and labeled consistently with the stormwater management report, and that can be fleshed out as we get into a more detailed review of the crossing the T's and the I's. Some of the profiles of the stormwater system indicate rims and inverts, elevations, and a sump with a question mark. It's not clear whether the sump is to be part of or how much work that will actually be, and it's a lot of drawing cleanup. And that type of drawing cleanup carries over to some conflicting text where some of the pages with notes have some certification sections for contractors and the applicants to sign off on and acknowledge everything, and some of the text is just overlapped, so that would be cleaned up with subsequent iterations of the plans, I would assume anyway. There are some notes with regard to one of the more specific notes, the more significant in my mind, is the phasing of the work. And a note number 10 with the general storm drainage notes refers to the structures being 1 inch below pavement. Often with regards to phased projects, they'll be constructed and opened and occupied with a binder course, but not the top course, and then the catch basins are 1.5 inches high, and the water runs around the catch basins instead of into the catch basins. So that type of phasing and detailing should be considered such that when you go back and pave the road, you pick the catch basins up where they belong, so that it functions as intended during the early phases of the project. It's easier to show it now than to fight about it later, so I'd just like to catch that earlier. Some of the erosion sediment control notes will have to just provide consistency throughout the different areas and different pages of the project. The areas that we have the most of an engineering type of concern, along the property line along Butterfield Road where the parking was changed from parallel to perpendicular parking, there's an area where there's a significant distance of a retaining wall, and it appears as though to construct a retaining wall there would be a necessity to get construction easements or temporary easements behind the wall. It's not shown in any detail how you will restrict your construction to the actual property line boundary. So that's an area of concern. Along with that, when we enter the cut area, there may be a need to relocate some of the water main. We have to double check the depth of cover on the water main, because if you're cutting the surface down, it may create an area where we may have to relay that water main at a lower depth.
As the slope increases coming up this way, as you start to look at the grading plan, the initial grading plan, there's gonna be a cutoff the top here. And with the existing water main that's already there,
It'd be
as
exposed
Craig was
below
saying, you
grade.
may minimize the separation from the surface to that main, or to other facilities. So, that main may have to be dropped even deeper or something, so, we'll have to look at that. And then you'll talk about the grading and the sloping issues there.
Yeah, the grades along that section of the project are rather steep. The existing parking lots function on those grades, and they're not that excessive with regards to being able to drive a car. However, the sidewalks are equally steep. There's some ways to mitigate that. There's handicapped parking spaces and handicap ramps and accessibility to the sidewalk, but then you're on a slope that's rather steep. And with some of the slopes that actually, in an icing situation, could be now whether they would consider or you could request possible de-icing systems or some sort of a perviousness with a radiant system to control the icing, or if the consideration can be placed on putting handicap parking spaces in a more closer proximity or an equal grade with the actual door locations may help to mitigate that.
Just the concern that, you might hit 10% slopes back in there, with the grading.
What
Which
was
is
the
tough
issue
for
with
a
the placement of the handicap spaces to begin with? So we
Right.
want them adjacent to the
In
entrances.
proximity to the entrances, yeah.
And that gives an opportunity to
Yeah.
plateau.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and that's the concern, as Craig was saying, if this straight run, if somebody in a wheelchair needs to get down the sidewalk at a 6-7% slope, it's tough. And even in winter conditions, if there's any icing at all, somebody walking, or even vehicles parking along this edge of the slope, you're at an incline when you step out of your vehicle, so.
Believe
Yeah,
me,
we'll
one
look at
thing,
that.
one thing people are familiar with in this village is the practicality and utility of the sidewalks. So
Right.
to take a close look at that.
Oh, yeah, so. But those are the things you start to see, as they start to work on their grading plans, so we can work through that.
Right, and then we have some very detailed comments about the class of the ductile iron pipe and the like, which we'll work out with the applicant.
Before we open it up to questions, I know you said this is preliminary and you haven't had an opportunity to review it yet, but based on what you've looked at so far, you've indicated what's lacking. Is there anything that you've indicated that you have a concern with doesn't appear to be workable, or that you want to have, that needs to be revisited?
I think my biggest concerns are the grading issues and the constructability of the retaining wall within the property boundary. That as well as some of the rainwater harvesting areas are shown, but they're not detailed, and they're shown under parking area, which is in relatively close proximity to what could be footing drains or other drains from the buildings. So we have to be careful that we're not short-circuiting, and although we're infiltrating into the soils, it's not short-circuiting into another drain pipe that ends up in another stormwater management practice somewhere else. And again, that comes with a more detailed review and even a more detailed presentation of the rainwater harvesting techniques and their intents with regards to those management practices. One area that we've talked about previously is the conversion of what was green space and prior iterations of the plan with parallel parking along the property line, along Butterfield Road. You know, it's now perpendicular parking, and it provides more parking, provides less area to landscape along the property boundary.
If you recall from our last meeting, though, there was a strong preference indicated that we wanted more green space to the extent that the parking requirement was satisfied.
And the parking requirement is exceeded. They're indicating that there's 237 or so and spaces provided, and there's 208 required. So there is,
29 more than.
so there is
Right.
an opportunity to provide more green space.
But that's not correct. The 208 is with the 20% maximum that you're allowed to waive. Okay, code
Okay.
is 238, 237.
Okay.
We're at 238. Okay, we meet code by one. If you want to say to us, take away 20% of the parking spaces, then that's what you can do. But we're meeting code right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the consideration for maybe along here.
Right.
I know the board initially was looking for additional parking to support maybe the municipal use that might go here, you know, through here, but that's certainly something to look at, you know, it's this edge, you know, and any
Well, the
potential
indication,
landscaping.
the original concept plan showed parallel parking,
Mhm.
so by going to perpendicular, we've increased the parking availability exponentially,
Mhm.
right? You've indicated that there are problems with the grade.
Potentially right now.
Potentially, right? So I would imagine that there might be an opportunity when Mr. Glero talks about, you know, the ability to waive up to 20%. There might be an opportunity to break up that grade or do something innovative or creative with the parking in that area
Exactly.
that is gonna meet both of those
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, other than that, we're not seeing any critical, you know, issues. We're just getting to the early designs, you know, so as soon as you start to see how one, you know, system connects to the other, we're not seeing a big concern. We haven't heard anything from Greg's people about, you know, sewer connections, water connections, those things seem to be fine. It's seeing how the site kind of functions, you know, internally, you know, from kind of a stormwater management and just a grading issue. And we kind of knew that was gonna happen. It's kind of a Hilly thing, so.
Any other comments or questions, members of the board?
I just wondering, do we have dimensions of the proximity of the buildings to the, I can't see from here, to the curb lines and everything?
This-
Sidewalks of where these buildings
This
are?
doesn't show it, but
Is it on the
Yeah,
I
plan?
think it's on some of the others.
It should be on one or the other sheet.
It's usually on the sheet.
Guess we had asked for that, no?
There's some here, this one's here. I
Right.
don't see
No,
one
for
here.
This one's missing.
That was the main one.
Yeah, this one's missing.
We
But
can-
we're
we
5
can
feet off the
scale.
property line, I can tell you that on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of them are shown. with the
Sidewalk.
sidewalks missing.
Right.
That's what we want, how close to the sidewalk?
That's the question of the
We're right
huge right away.
Yeah,
That was the right of way off the right of way and then the
Right.
delineation for the entry to building one.
Right.
You know, it showed,
Well, it comes from-
Right, it showed that wide entryway.
A wide entryway.
We've narrowed it down and we've
They
created
call
an
it
internal
this.
crosswalk across the front of the building. The-
and
the
that's
building-
something your architect is working on
That's
with
right.
the HDRB, correct?
Right.
Okay, so that would be,
And this building, we moved back the original,
zero setback.
yeah, the original setback on the plan approved with the EAF, I think was 0. And we moved it back to 5 feet.
5 feet,
Board
right.
has to go back a little bit.
Right.
So we can get those dimensions put on there so we can
Yep.
see them?
Yeah, I think that's the only
With
one
that-
that's
and here.
missing.
I wanna see this.
Yeah, that one's there.
that one is.
12.7 feet
Yeah.
Well, the curb or sidewalk
to the
or?
property
To the
line.
property.
We'll have to do it to the existing sidewalk as well. That dimension.
Well, it's to the corner of the property line of the building, but not to the
That's
sidewalk.
the sidewalk.
Ms. Arena, is there anything that you want to add to what Craig has enumerated?
No, I think it would be helpful if we just had a little sit-down work session with,
Yeah.
with the reviewing staff, and just go through comment by comment, once they have their full list of comments. You know, and if we get some of these ahead of time, we could start to address them, you know, as needed. But I didn't hear anything that didn't seem like it was just making sure things correspond correctly or just cleaning up some information.
And furnishing the missing detail.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So it didn't sound like anything more than that to me.
The only part we haven't really had time to review, because we received the SWIP later than the plan set,
Right.
is the sizing of the stormwater management practices and all, which we will get into and we'll do the review. And I'm sure that, that if it's a question of the models or the assumptions, then that's best worked out between technical staff. I would agree with the applicant there.
Let me ask at this point, right, our next meeting is 2 weeks from now, right? It seems like we have a great deal of ground to cover, right? So, again, from a technical perspective, what do you feel most comfortable in being able to provide us a complete analysis of in 2 weeks? Obviously, it's not all these issues that we're talking about.
No, we have, we've generated 4 or 5 pages of just cursory comments, just, as we start to see things come through. My anticipation is, and we've talked certainly with Joe and Matt, the expectation is, we'll get the additional information that's still outstanding, very quickly. If we can get that, by the end of the week, then we're still fine to meet, our deadline, the 2 weeks that we need to generate a letter so that this board is ready on the 19th to look at that. And our plan is to not give you that letter on the 19th, to give you our comment letter, in advance of the 19th. So you have several days to look at it and kind of, read through it. You'll have the plans in front of you already. It'll be a very technical letter. You'll see a lot of detailed notes and a lot of detailed questions in there. But at least you'll have that, so that on the 19th, we can walk through that letter with the board. And we'll have potentially met with the applicants as well, given our review comments, which we like to do. I mean, that's the best way to kind of work these, some of these technical issues out. So that when we hit you on the 19th, we'll say, here's our comments, here's what we see, here's some outstanding issues. We've talked to the applicant about X, Y, and Z. They're, okay to cover this. So that then after the 19th, it's very clear that the applicant knows what they need to submit on the next routine, plan set coming in with the additional detail, for some time probably to your next meeting, December, somewhere in there.
Well, we'll see, we're getting into the holiday there too.
Well, that's the thing, but it's all predicated on what we get and when we get it. As long as we have 2 weeks.
The important thing that we have to be, mindful of is whatever you have coming in between now and when you generate your technical memo,
Yep.
it has to be key to what has been presented and discussed to us this evening.
Mm-hmm.
There can't be any new additions.
Nope,
Right.
it'll be in addition to what we have.
Right.
So again, we're assuming the engineer's report, first water, engineer's report for sewer, and then we had just some additional comments.
Yeah,
We already sent to Matt, some additional things about the SWIP, a little bit of information, soils report, those kinds of things.
Right, some of the information in the SWIP that we noted, that they give us the soil characteristics based on their deep tests. I know they went back and they did the PERC test, but they didn't, or the infiltration test, but they didn't include that data in the report. And then there's other, the test dates and times and stuff should be supplemented within the actual SWIP, just to document who was there and what was there. So the comments of that nature, which are relatively minor additions to the document, but it's something, it's stuff that the other option, another missing item that we would ask for would be a lighting plan or some lighting, indications as to where the lighting, what levels of lighting will be around the site. And I think that to the crux of your question, by the 19th, or in advance of the 19th, we certainly will have a completed review list of comments. We can even meet with the applicant to go over those, but I don't anticipate that they would have time to actually revise.
No.
We're not gonna have that happen.
So,
No.
it would
That's my
basically-
point is, I don't,
Right.
the 19th is keyed to a review of what's been presented and
Yes,
discussed.
Correct.
Right? If they're particularly industrious or have no personal lives, that's terrific, they can discuss it after the 19th,
Right.
all right?
Yeah, we want to take it one segment at a time as we go through.
We have asked before and long worried, and people will worry again, about this poor Copper Beech tree, which is now, these properties go almost to the trunk of the tree. So it's in their yards with their homes touching it. that looks
Well, we have asked for
highly
that.
questionable.
There was prior discussion with regards to a protected easement there.
Right.
Right.
And one of our comments, one of our detailed comments is the roof drains that are shown within the drip line of that, is that the roof drains from this building come in to a different drainage system or over to another roof drain set connection here, rather than going underneath the tree. And then this house can be broken off and go the other way. So there are comments pertaining to excavation within that, and then there'll be comments regarding that easement, so.
Right, so in the next iteration of the site plan, we're gonna wanna see the, you know, on the drainage sheet, the
Right.
fact that the drip
Show
line
that.
of that tree is in no way encroached upon.
Yeah, this would be the detail sheet, and you would see this
Right.
yellow line segmented in different directions for that, yep.
But we had also asked for, this not being able to be trimmed by these.
Yeah, and I think,
We have an easement shown on, it's on the site plan drawing.
yeah,
And there would be an
Show
actual
protected.
easement agreement that would be
Correct.
filed with the
With
deeds,
those homeowners.
with the deeds and noted on the plan as well as in their deeds. And not only in their deed, but on a plan or on a site plan that they get as a point of sale, because a lot of people don't look at the details of their
Right.
deeds. So if it's, we can cover it in two ways, and we can sell it, we can cover it in the easement that goes with the deed and gets filed. We can cover it on plan that we give them, we can request that any final survey of that goes with sale of property shows that easement or refers to the easement as
And
well.
that'll be on the plan
We
as
can,
well too.
we can require the seller to put all that information in up to 2 or 3 different places, and then ultimately becomes, you know, the obligation of the property owner to actually read the documentation that they're obligated to live up to.
But then it involves, because I've done that on plats in other communities, and then it becomes an issue for the sales agent and the attorneys involved.
correct.
Right, so the municipality has done everything above and beyond that it could possibly do from a
Right.
legal perspective.
Right.
And that's the level of detail that we're gonna wanna see here.
Yeah, and again, it just becomes a condition of your final site plan.
And it will also be a question of during construction.
Correct.
Yes, one of the other comments talks about
Protecting that,
tree
yeah,
protection
during
fences
construction.
and, you know, area, notes that
Yeah.
construction equipment are kept out.
Yeah, you don't wanna run equipment underneath the drip line, you know, compact the soils around the tree or anything.
During the EAF, the arborist came up with a, you know, with a plan.
Yep.
In terms of how, and we're gonna wanna make sure that when we get to that point, that's
That's
delineated,
instituted.
that there's the arborist on site, or that there's a regular inspection.
For sure.
Delineate the progress and any impact on the tree.
And you said there'd be fencing around it?
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
protected
we,
fencing.
we noted, but it didn't show up on the,
Okay.
Yeah,
it's on the erosion and sediment control plan.
Yeah.
We noted it, but it didn't show up on the drawing.
Now, the reason I'm asking for this level of detail here, because when we initially talked about this, I think we're sufficiently far enough along in the detail on this site plan, you see with the SWIP and everything else, is I want, again, as I spoke with you about,
Right.
the PDF versions of this, because this needs to be posted
Yeah.
on the website.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you know, a complete set of plans is great to have on file, anybody can come in and inspect them, but there's no reason technically why we can't make this
Sure.
available.
Sure.
And there's sufficient detail now that people can look at it and see what they're looking at.
Mhm. Yeah, if you'd like, we can make sure that this plan set, this iteration gets posted, that we're gonna be generating our first set of comments off of.
Well, because if your technical review memo is gonna be available on the 19th, and it is keyed to this set of plans,
We should make the plans available.
the correspondence is available, the plans need to be made available
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Okay?
Is that a problem?
The only thing I'd like to ask is, when you have your rough draft of your technical comments done, that's a good time to meet.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that if there's something that's there and you're not seeing it, it doesn't end up in the memo.
Right,
I'd
yeah,
rather-
I
I'd
have no
rather-
problem with that.
Yeah, I'd rather not have information in there that maybe is not.
Exactly, yeah, that's
Not
not a problem at all,
reflective.
Joe.
And the other thing I want to point out, and you brought up the question about, you were discussing the increase in parking impervious area due to that parking area there. With the drainage system we're providing and the infiltration, and we have extremely well-drained soils here. And actually, because the amount of this site that's currently improved and the amount of detention we need to provide is reduced, the water quality volume is really the superseding sizing of the system. And we are infiltrating most of the water on site, and we are reducing between 65 and 80% the peak runoff volume off the site from what exists now. So this plan has very positive impact as far as the off-site drainage goes,
So I
and water
think,
quality goes.
I think you'd wanna get the engineering that demonstrates that.
Well,
to
it's
them.
in there, they just haven't gotten to that
Right.
point, but it's in there. If they agree with what we've done, then that's.
As long as the math works,
Yeah.
you know, and it proves out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a developed site, we're aware of that, we're aware of, you know, the infiltration and the off-site drainage and whatever. I mean, so, to the extent that you're not disturbing or improving more of the site than presently is already there, and the fact that the technology and the technical improvements you're making, I would expect that it would have a dramatic impact on lessening that impact.
Yep.
So, any other questions or comments at this point in time from members of the board?
I have a question. You know, one of my big concerns is what kind of surfaces we're going to have vis-a-vis runoff or infiltration, and how does that affect the stormwater management?
Well,
Because really,
yeah, I mean, basically, because of what I just explained, we're essentially capturing almost all the runoff from the impervious areas and putting it into the ground. So the impact of it is, I don't want to say it's negligible, because impervious surface is impervious surface, but we're dealing with it on site to a point where we are reducing the impacts off-site over what exists now by, as I said, 65 to 80%. So, if anything, we're improving the condition over what you have now, and we're infiltrating all of our water quality volume, which is pretty much the best you can do. That's about
right,
the
well,
best you can
then
do.
we come back to surface.
So what, I guess what you're saying then
What
is,
are our surfaces gonna be?
what Karin's question is, are you anticipating utilizing pervious surfaces to get to that point? Or are you saying because the technology that you're employing is such
Yes,
and represents an improvement that you don't need to consider pervious
yes,
surfaces?
exactly.
Soils are so good here. I mean, really, we can handle it all in the stormwater plant. Let me just say one point.
Yeah.
There's 71,000 square feet of paved area on the site right now. After development, we'll have 66,000 square feet of paved area. So we're reducing the paved area from where it is now. Not only that, nothing is retained on the site now. Afterwards, we'll be retaining everything. So, just so you get an idea of the magnitude of how this is being affected. Is
Well,
that
I
right?
can understand the paved part, but then you add the buildings to it.
That, it includes the buildings also.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
In total impervious surface, we're reducing it
So
down to
there's a
66.
5% reduction in the total impervious surface in the development over what's presently there,
Yes,
including the new construction?
including the new construction.
And all those parking spaces.
The paved areas, right? I think it's the paved areas.
Well, that's-
The buildings are going down into the storm drainage system. They're all
I'm
being.
sorry,
Right.
we're talking
Okay,
about
These
so-
These are paved areas that we're
Paved
talking
areas.
about,
Alright,
the
we're talking
impervious
about
Paved areas.
pavement.
paved areas.
Pavement and the sidewalks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's,
That's the
Yeah.
distinction, and that's, your
Right.
engineering will delineate that.
But now with
Right,
that, with the
yeah, I
drainage system, you're using still the dual system that you have, what it was existing, and then the park area that's gonna be set up. The drainage area that's gonna be set
Yeah,
up.
Jim, they're looking at,
We've got,
Right, so
two
it's gonna be a
primary
combo of
areas.
the two
Yeah, we have a
systems.
few.
Right.
Okay, it's not just one system.
It's-
yeah, we
there's
have
a
3
few.
infiltration
Yeah.
areas, and then we have the 2 rainwater harvesting areas, where we're gonna take roof runoff, capture it in a contained system. It's a totally enclosed system, which will be engineered with a pump, and that'll be tied into the irrigation system for the site. So that'll be the primary source for irrigation water.
Okay.
And as a green infrastructure practice, that's 100% credit as far as the water quality
Absolutely, yeah.
volume goes. And then that'll be supplemented with a well, which we have to determine once we get to the health department, where we're gonna site a well. But we're gonna have a backup well for the irrigation system that will supplement any water that's lacking in the rainwater harvesting system.
And the engineering is gonna delineate what you think the rainwater harvesting system is gonna be able to yield?
Anticipated rainfall.
Well,
I mean, based on historic trends, I
you
mean,
can
I don't know
look at
how, I don't know how
current
carefully you're
Yes.
engineering this,
yeah, no, I,
That's why we have the well.
okay?
The well's the
Well,
back.
I'm saying if you're putting in a well, you must have done some preliminary
Yeah, I
calculation.
mean, you have to plan on zero at
Gotcha.
some point, because you could have a drought, so the
Right,
well's gotta
okay.
take over.
Gotcha.
And the landscape architect, although we don't need it, he's created two areas, one near the Gateway Park and one over near the Butterfield Square that are bioretention basins.
Okay. So there's a lot for us to review in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you want to notice it, we could have a site plan pizza party.
The idea of the well has already been spoken to with the town?
I think they're the ones that told
It's
us they
their
didn't want us to use
preference.
the village water,
Yeah.
so we won't be using any village water for irrigation.
irrigation.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the water superintendent's suggestion, what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And the irrigation means for all of the landscaped area.
Right.
Yes.
Are the, is it anticipated, I mean, the way the system is designed, are the 3 private homes gonna have any access to that loop,
No.
or they're
No, they have to be separate.
separate subject?
Yeah, they're not part of the homeowners.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments as far as the site plan engineering that we've discussed this evening?
That has one thing.
Matt?
We've been to the HDRB and they're providing us with some good input how the building should look and, you know, they're kind of saying how they want the 2 commercial buildings down near the front to be similar and then residential another way and then the homes to be tied into the homes across the street. So we're getting that kind of input. But the point came up is that they would like to move this building and make it parallel to the road. And they'd like to move this much further back from the road. And our response is that we're at the engineering phase, and we have located the buildings, and they seem to think that they have flexibility in that.
A question, what is the percent of orientation change then? We're allowed 15%, are you talking more than 15%?
Oh, yeah, they wanna,
Well, how can you do that? I mean, the
Hang-
B4A specifically limits our
Can I,
ability
yeah.
to change it.
Arnie brings up an excellent point, which, again, we were not part of the HDRB review process, but we all are impacted by the B4A zoning text, which is now in force,
right,
right? So my suggestion would be is if the HDRB wishes to pursue that line of questioning or that suggestion, that they consult with the Butterfield Land Use Attorney, Anna Giorgio, and perhaps your representative, Stephen Barshoff,
right.
and, because that's a question for the attorneys, it's really not a question for the planning board, or for that matter, for the HDRB,
Okay,
all right? And that's the extent of what we'll comment on that.
okay. Thank you.
Subdivision.
Mhm. Yeah, we'll take this up. As we discussed in prior meetings, we want to run the subdivision of the property, which is required concurrent with site plan review. And the applicants have submitted this subdivision map to us. Let's roll this out just to show. This is the subdivision map. As you can see, there's the 4 lots we're proposing a major subdivision. Lots 1, 2, and 3 are the single-family homes up on Paulding. Lot 4 is the main Butterfield site. They've got the necessary details on this subdivision plat that I think, you know, it's a relatively straightforward subdivision. We're not looking at anything too complicated. It's kind of breaking this initial piece up into really 4, which we've seen, you know, numerous times. So the necessary details are here. We've referred this to Anna to take a look at from just a legal perspective to make sure that it's, you know, meets any requirements. And if she's satisfied with it, I would think you could go to a public hearing on this, you know, after your next November meeting. You know, maybe November, set that
Well,
public
hang
hearing.
on, hang on. If, you said you referred this to Anna for
Mhm.
comment or whatever, So, you'll be in touch with Anna.
Yeah.
For the 19th, if she has no problem or issue a resolution or whatever, have her prepare a summary memo for
Yep.
the board.
Yep.
And then with a resolution that we can discuss
Okay.
on the 19th.
Yep.
And at that point, if we're ready to go, then at that point, we can determine the resolution and set a public hearing, assuming, you know, she has no, issue with the site plan as proposed.
Yeah.
Do any members of the board have any additional, I mean, we have discussed this, it's fairly straightforward. Any other questions or comments about what we're looking at? Did the applicant have anything they wanted to add?
No.
Right, and we'll just wait for Anna's recommendation and a resolution.
Yep.
And we'll take it up for discussion at our next meeting on the 19th.
Mhm.
And it also appears that some of the information on the subdivision plan is the same as, or some of the information that we would be requesting on the site plan. So the utility easements and
Meets and
the
bounds.
existing
Yeah, it just
easements and
wasn't
meets and
turned
bounds.
on, yeah.
It's a matter of either turning the layers on or including the
the layers
subdivision
is
sheet as an
just-
additional sheet as part of the existing conditions when we get to that point, so.
Will Craig also make Anna aware, just to make sure that she has everything she needs to prepare the subdivision resolution, in case there's anything that's coming in that you guys are waiting on that has any pertinence to.
Yeah, we'll apprise her of anything that's outstanding. I don't think there's really anything at this point that's gonna affect the subdivision, so.
All right, any other questions or comments on subdivision as proposed?
This is pretty straightforward.
Everybody of a mind that assuming Anna has no issue with it and is able to prepare the resolution and memo, that we can place this on the agenda for our next meeting, which would be November 19th.
This is
That's what I said.
Yeah.
clearly there from,
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Belt, pro forma, but it's belt and suspenders. Okay. All right, then, thank you. So what the prize in of is be looking for a memo and a resolution for the 19th on the subdivision.
Yeah, I'll talk to her tomorrow.
I have to go back and see exactly.
This,
What
yeah, this,
about this on
this,
Ludwig building?
yeah. This setback is consistent with what we've
With
seen
the
here and
others,
on
yeah.
both sides, yeah.
Because we had to realign that so it matched what was already on Polder's.
That's that, 20
I'm,
feet?
what I'm continue worried about this guy, if
Yeah.
he survives.
Yeah, at a minimum,
That'd be very tough.
at a minimum, these two lots would be deed restricted, you know, with all kinds of restrictions to protect that tree, so.
And that also was lot 3 was the one where the mirror image got flipped, so it brought it
Yeah.
away from the tree a bit, for the
That's on
garage.
that side.
Okay. All right, thanks with that, Chuck. Any other questions or comments? Gentlemen, thank you.
I have one
I'm
quick
sorry.
question. Just pertaining to the parking that we spoke about before, 237, or 238. That included the underground parking and everything?
Yes.
Full total?
That's the total on site,
Yeah.
within and without, okay. That being the case, any other questions or comments from members of the board concerning either the subdivision or where we are in this iteration of the site plan?
No, but I just wanna say again, I'm very concerned about surfaces. And I, this is just me, I would like to knock out those parking spaces that got put in.
Well, that again, as what we just heard, is that requires an affirmative action on our part, which personally, I don't have an issue with considering. Once we have the engineering, then we're in a position to make that determination.
For shared parking.
Yeah, in terms of the shared parking and the fact that the engineering has kept all the water detention on the site, which would be an improvement over what there now. But again, we need to see the engineering, we need to see the recommendation, and then we'll be able to figure out how much
Right,
latitude we actually have.
Because on the original, what we originally approved under seeker, we had fewer parking spaces than there are now, and I think,
Right,
um,
that was with the 20% set off.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think,
Right.
yep,
And, you know, again, once we have a better, clear picture of the grading, you know, that may affect some of that as well.
Yeah,
You know, the practical realities of putting parking along that edge may, you know, kind of,
and you
Dictate.
retain,
That might help.
yeah,
you might also lose some parking in terms of the easement with the
Right.
retaining wall,
right.
and what you're talking about, like the grading with the water main that's pre-existing.
Yeah,
We'll see.
just an example, but one of the concerns with that retaining wall up higher was you know, it's literally right on the property line, you know, offset maybe a foot. But to build that retaining wall, you've got to obviously excavate back into that bank a little bit, which is encroaching on the neighbor's property. So you can get an easement potentially for that and just restore it. But there's a couple mature trees in there as well that you don't want to necessarily affect, you know, with that kind of construction.
Good, Chuck, because if we worry about the Copper Beech, yes,
You gotta
there are
worry
some
about 'em all.
other
There's other
trees
trees.
that we should.
Yeah.
think
So when we
about.
get
So we'll
into
look at that
into the
whole-
engineering, absolutely, and that might be, you know, again, that's where the reduction in the parking would
Right.
occur.
Yeah.
And maybe we can look at a way to maybe realign some of the handicap parking access
Yeah.
in that area as well too, since it's
Exactly.
at grade with the buildings.
Yep.
Question.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments at this point? All right, we have reached the portion of our meeting where we, you know, solicit public comment. Again, if you're a member of the public, you may comment on anything that was on the agenda or that was discussed by members of the board or a consultant this evening. You have public comment, we ask that you identify yourself for the record. Is there any public comment this evening?
I have public comment. Stephanie Hawkins, I'm a trustee on the village board. Many of you here know me. A couple people who couldn't be here this evening asked me to
I'm
bring.
sorry, I can't hear you.
A couple people who couldn't be here this evening asked me to bring some questions to you.
Excuse me?
And
Excuse me. Public comment is just that, public comment. You may
well, that's
read-
interesting. Now, Karn attended the October 21st. Let me finish.
You may read,
October 21st.
you may read a statement. You
You'll
may
let
make a
me
comment.
finish, Barney.
You may read a statement or
Karn
make a comment.
Dunn attended the October 21st Village Board Workshop. It was a Tuesday, you were not present, and it was a meeting at which we discussed the question of confusion that 4 out of 5 planning board members expressed.
Except for
September.
the fact of the matter is, that's not public comment about anything that was on the agenda or discussed here this
This
evening.
evening, Arnie Sari raised the point that the footprints of the concept plan were a question to be addressed. That came up in discussion, and that's what this is about.
And a majority of the
So-
board, the minutes were amended to reflect
I'm
that.
going to proceed with the comments that were
You may make a
given to me.
comment.
So, on September 17th, Karn Dunn and Ann Pellisseri and James Pergamo and Arnie Sari all said that they were told that they could address the mass and scale of the development that they wanted to reduce at site plan review. And this is a matter of public record. This was reported in phillipstown.info. A question for all of you, and but perhaps Chuck can answer this question because he's the paid professional here. If we accept the consistent recollection of these 4 planning board members, why would Chuck or Anna or Barney ever have advised them that on a conditional zoning change such as that you were reviewing during seeker, why would they ever have been advised that they could go back and reduce the mass and scale during site plan review, when we know that the proposed law as drafted removed that possibility? And second, what was the purpose of completing a seeker review at great expense to the developer, issuing a negative declaration that publicly informed the developer he could build without impact, and then sending a memo to raise the mass and scale issue with, among other things, as part of an environmental impact to be concerned about? During seeker, then trustee Matt Francisco, who was the liaison to the planning board, asked the planning board if, along with this memo of recommendations, you would be including alternate concept plans. And when he asked that question, he said that Barney Malloy refused to answer, quite similar to this evening. So those are questions that Matt Francisco asked me to bring to you. Another resident asked me to bring questions that, on consideration of the role of the chair in the seeker process, and the fact that questions like that were refused, and the fact that 4 out of 5 planning board members were surprised and frustrated to learn that they apparently misunderstood what it was that they were issuing a negative deck on. This resident asks, or remarks that the planning board chair appears to be working for an out-of-town developer instead of the village, and that this is a problem that deserves scrutiny. And he also asks the question, and it's a question for the village board also, is when there is an appearance of a breach of client confidentiality by an attorney, and he's not saying that a bona fide breach did occur, but certainly he says that there's an appearance of a breach. This is related to the letter that was shared with you, but then also shared with the PCNR, the letter from Anna Giorgio. He suggests that, he asks if there's a reason the village would not refer this matter to the New York State Court Disciplinary Authority. And that's Evan Hudson. He's a resident of High Street. And my own question, and this is for you this evening, Chuck. Why would you have led the planning board to issue a negative declaration knowing full well that the adopted law would render mass and scale the issue that our planning board repeatedly raised during seeker as a concern of theirs? They would place mass and scale beyond their authority. And so those are my questions. And it would be great if somebody would like to answer them.
Is there any other public comment? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Or not?
Would anybody like to offer some contributions to the discussion about this?
If
Because
you adjourn the
it is
meeting.
it is a problem. You seem reticent to adjourn. You seem reticent to speak publicly about, when asked. It's a huge issue here.
We're in the middle of site plan review, right? We will continue with site plan review, as is our obligation under the law, New York State, right? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for this evening? Public comment is concluded. Okay, well, we can just sit here then.
Do we want to talk about what she brought up?
First of all, we have a standing practice of public comment, right? There are other boards in the village that don't even permit public comment, right?
I asked the question though, do we want to discuss what she brought up? You're saying no?
If you want to discuss what she brought up, you adjourn the meeting first. You're free to stay here, have any conversation with whomever you want, but it is not an agenda item. It is not a matter of business before us this evening.
There's no requirement that you adjourn the
That's been
meeting
our
before
consistent process.
discussing this. This is a matter of the board.
This is
This is a
also
matter
not,
of the
this is also
village.
not a village board meeting where we're just going to deviate from an agenda, deviate from what is the matter before us, right? This is planning board.
That's
is not-
that's clear.
Yes, it's clear. Yes, it's clear. We
So-
have a specific charge, we have a specific application that we are required to follow a specific process on. The fact of the matter is, if there are members of the public who either do not understand, do not share in our desire to
You needn't
execute our
patronize
function.
me. I understand what you're trying to do here. If your
Stephanie, if I
board,
was
if
I
your
was
board
attempting to
would like to
patronize you,
discuss,
it would be clear.
I'd be happy to hear.
Any
what
members of the board
what
may
other members have
remain
to
to
say.
discuss with Stephanie Hawkins whatever they so choose, but our meeting in terms of our agenda and our business has been concluded. I would like a motion to conclude.
I move that we adjourn and continue that discussion
May I
at
have a
some other
second?
time.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
4-1. Thank you. Meeting is concluded. Our next meeting is the 19th.